always tell people the first year of when I was a superintendent, the superintendent tapped me, and I knew she worked incredibly hard. She was incredible, one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. So please take this with a grain of salt. But literally, I remember thinking to myself, I don't even really know what a superintendent does. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I can figure this out, right? Not discounting that, but I did not have a good concept of the scale of work. I didn't really even understand what was my responsibility above all else. And so I think that one of the real struggles of the superintendency is learning what really is your role.
Hello, welcome everyone to TomoClub Podcast series. Today on our podcast, we have the superintendent of Manson School District, Miss Tabatha Mires, and I'm Avinash co-founder at TomoClub, and it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you today, Mrs. Meyer, and I'm super pumped of discussing the topic about how do you build strong systems and processes in small school districts. I think I've worked with a lot of school districts, and apart from few, majority of them are unable to make a lot of changes because of money constraints, because a lot of vendors do not find them lucrative enough to work with them. And similarly, it's very difficult to attract talent, keep the school running because of the low enrollments. So I think it's a very specific topic that we picked up today to deep dive. So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and honored to even share a little bit of our story here at Manson.
100%. So before I discuss and talk about the topic, my first go-to question is, what got you into education in the first place? If you can share a snapshot of your journey. And most importantly, the reason that you started working in education, is it still relevant after so many years?
Absolutely. It's such a great question, isn't it? I think we all assume, and I worked with high school students for a long time, we assume sometimes that there's a direct path to where we find ourselves in life. And that was definitely not my story. I graduated from a very small high school, 21 graduating students. And so a community of 1,000 people. Came from a sort of a community of educators in my family and close friends. But when I graduated from high school, my story was, I'm getting out of here and I am never coming back to small town Washington State. I'm going to go see the world. And so I ended up attending college in Massachusetts, planned to be a diplomat. Somewhere along the way, met my husband. We got married and had a moment where we said, gosh, we've got to get a paying job now. And we're going to have to get this done quickly because we're on our own now. We got married in college. I had a ton of credits in social studies, and I think it was really preordained that I was going to be a teacher. I loved school. I love school every day still. So I sat down with a college counselor and said, okay, what can I finish quickly? And that led me to become a secondary social studies teacher, which when my husband and I both graduated, similarly, we were young and didn't plan ahead very well, and said, whoever gets a job first, that's where we'll go. He got a job close to our hometown, right back where I said I was never going to go. And I got my first teaching position there, taught a couple of periods a day. So I found myself when I was, 21 years old, 22 years old, back teaching at that high school kids, and loved it. Loved every day in the classroom. As a small school teacher, I stayed there. I definitely knew that community had made a difference, what they poured in and invested in me. And so once I was a part of that system, I absolutely loved being in that district and taught for, 20 years-ish. Taught English, social studies, ASB, loved it. Never planned to leave the classroom. Got my master's, of course. Didn't get my administrative credentials because I never planned to leave the classroom. And some interesting things happened. As a small district, we saw a revolving door of district leaders, people who really came to the district as a starting point or as a retire, rehire. They really were skilled leaders, but they weren't able to stay in the district or connect with the community long enough to really impact change. So after a series of changes, now I would literally I would talk to my board members if they did this, and we would have really honest conversations. But a board member, the board chair, excuse me, came to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for a principal. You should probably do this." And we need some consistency. We'd been a Gates grant school. We'd done some innovative things, but those have been kind of stalled by this revolving door. So I went back and got my principal credentials and served as a principal for about 9 years. And again, during that time, I got to still do ASB and teach because it was a small school. Worked with a phenomenal superintendent. And when she retired, she tapped me and said, "Hey, I really think you should do this." So I had gone back to school, got my admin credentials. Then I went back and got my superintendent credentials and found myself as a superintendent at a district of about 250 kids. The first couple of years, first 3 years, I was the high school principal and secondary principal and superintendent. From there, our district, to be able to have resources and do the things we wanted to do instructionally, I served as a superintendent also at another small district for a couple of years, a district of only 30 kids. So I was the superintendent in those two districts, loved it, and an elementary principal there. It was a K-6 district. After 5 years, then I came to Manson, where I'm in year 3 now at Manson. We have about 650 students, and I absolutely have loved it. I loved my time in my past districts, loved our board, loved what we were doing. There just came a point when it was probably time for a shift for them, and also for me in terms of what would be the next step in terms of continuing to grow. So not a straight path. My why when I got into it, I think I honestly, I referred to it a little bit. I loved school, which has been both a wonderful asset to me as a superintendent, principal, and teacher. But sometimes I've had to remember that that's not everyone's school experience. And so that I've really had to keep that front of mind. But I will say that being a part of a community that poured into me, that believed in me, that made me see possibilities that I didn't even see for myself as a student, and that why still resonates with me as a superintendent. It's still my why. It's still that idea of finding the potential in people and helping them to develop it to whatever path they want to take going forward, whether that's students or teachers. So I would say it's evolved, but definitely stayed the same. And I still love the first day of school. Still, to this day, it's my first day, my best day of the year.
No, love the story. And I'm glad that the reason is still valid and stronger than ever. One thing that I learned from your story, never say never, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And I can't imagine like you, 20-year-old, teaching high school kids. I don't know, did they take you seriously?
Well, that's a great question. I look back on those days of my first days in the classroom so fondly, but also with a little bit of like, oh, those poor kids. I didn't know what I was doing from day to day. I was just such a novice, and stars in their eyes kind of thing. I have the gift of having a pretty solid mean face. My own children would call it the mom face, and I can turn that on pretty well. So I was relatively effective because of that ability to turn on that mean face. Those kids were incredibly gracious. They, I'm sure, knew I didn't know what I was doing, and I find that kids have the most grace of anyone. So they trained me up on how to really work with students and teach.
Actually, I should have been asking how did the parents took it, because they are much more, at least now, like back they might be still more easygoing. Right now, parents are on the edge for almost everything and anything. So we'll definitely come to that. You did mention about the fact that you have been to big cities, you have seen small school districts. So what do you think is in a way, like the biggest strength that a small school district has, or something that they can do much better than a large school district?
Absolutely. I think for me, what I really notice about small districts is it's sort of this idea that a large district is kind of like a cruise ship, right? It has a lot of incredible things happening on that ship, right? There are a lot of things happening, but to steer that ship and change direction takes a long time. That ship isn't able to make quick shifts in direction. A small district, it's really a rowboat, right? You're able to make a shift and a turn very quickly. So if you're able to get some buy-in, some consensus, some energy around an initiative, I think a small district is able to move toward implementation and see impacts of that implementation very quickly, which educators love success, whether it's the superintendent, principal, a teacher. That success builds on itself, so you can quickly build this level of momentum that's pretty incredible. And I've seen that happen. I was a superintendent during the pandemic, and I was able to see our ability to shift modalities, get kids back in buildings quickly, train teachers up on new strategies, implement, get technology out quickly, and really reinvent ourselves as a district pretty incredibly. That has been my story, I think, in all three of the districts where I've served as a superintendent. I've been able to see that quick shift. I will tell you, though, it takes a lot of manpower because, again, we're a rowboat or a boat where everybody has to really row to get it moving. You don't have this big engine that's keeping things going. So that being said, you've got to find ways to really streamline and focus on what you're going to be about as a district, because you certainly can't be about everything like that cruise ship, right? You can't have everything. You can do some things really well. You also have to find some ways to streamline, or you're going to wear out your people, especially if you're innovative. So while that's an incredible strength, that ability to shift, I think you always have to remember we're not ever going to be the cruise ship. We can't do that. But what we can do is personalize education. We can implement, and we know our students so incredibly deeply that we can make those adjustments that we need to quickly.
Love that answer. Love that answer. And I think no school district ever imagined to be large. Their first goal is to serve their community and the students well. So I think that doesn't matter, the scale. And I love that fact that you can, do quick implementation, bring new changes. Now coming to your initial point, when you said that you love being a teacher, I've seen this kind of a problem with a lot of superintendents, that they sometimes try to do a lot of other jobs. They try to be a teacher, and it's a very different scope of work. And especially in a small school district, it's even harder because you can see the classrooms right in front of you. And
yes.
So how have you been able to use this as a strength rather than weakness? Because we don't want to micromanage, because you want to make sure that the people that you have hired, they do their job with comfort, with some room of error. So instead of becoming a micromanager, how do you become and use this as a strength?
Absolutely. I love that question so much, because I think that took me, this is year 8 in the superintendency for me. And that, I always tell people, the first year of a superintendent, when I was a superintendent, the superintendent tapped me, and I knew she worked incredibly hard. She was incredible, one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. So please take this with a grain of salt. But literally, I remember thinking to myself, I don't even really know what a superintendent does. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I can figure this out, right? Not discounting that, but I did not have a good concept of the scale of work. I didn't really even understand what was my responsibility above all else. And so I think that one of the real struggles of the superintendency is learning what really is your role. It was a benefit to me that the districts a district that I'd been a part of really worked on the leader in me following Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And so the idea of empowering people to lead and then getting out of their way was something that I was a little bit familiar with. That being said, it took time for me to learn that my role is to support the people who are impacting instruction, because I think that's where you can really you can put some roadblocks in what principals are doing and teachers are doing, because if I say something in a staff meeting offhand, like, boy, I love a lesson that includes X, whatever that is. People will take that as she wants to see that in our classrooms, and they'll make a shift in instruction. And so I have to be really conscientious about the fact that's not my role. My role is to support principals, to build their capacity, to build systems, to make things possible for students. Their job is also not to micromanage teachers, but to set clear frameworks, expectations. And I would say the framework of it all is systems, right? It's about systems, because in a small district, very quickly, it can become about people. As a superintendent, everything, Tabetha knows how to do that. Tabetha does this. Tabetha does that.
Yeah.
But if Tabetha leaves, that system is lost. And so the human capital is incredible in that small district, and the expertise, the investment. But if we're not building something that can be replicated, that can be written down as a process and a system, still knowing that the most important thing in any system is the people, right? It's your human capital. But if you don't have a system that formalizes some of those processes, you really are going to miss the boat. And so as I've been a superintendent, I think I've come to realize that my job is system refiner, system creator, system reviser, system enabler. So that has shifted my thinking in what my role is. But if you don't know what your role is, as a new superintendent, often you might have been successful as a principal. You might have been successful as a teacher. So very quickly, you fall into habits of doing what you know and what you found success in. And so that was hard for me at first, because I didn't know what to do as a superintendent. And so I would find myself in situations where I was getting in the way of the work that needed to be done unintentionally. But micromanaging. Absolutely.
No, I think it's not just about this profession, but any profession. This is a big problem of how you shift gears when you are handling a new layer of the organization and not being the doer all the time. And of course, not meant that there is not doing at a
right.
And before we come to the part that, how systems are important, I totally get it. I love that answer that the school is run by a designation, not by the person. So I absolutely love that ideology, because otherwise it's very quickly can fall everything apart if you're very people dependent. But first, I want to understand the unique challenges of small schools, because post that, discussing about the solution of the systems will be much more, logical. So I would love to know, what are the unique challenges of a small school, which people may not find it that obvious. We know about the major challenges, but still unique challenges of small schools.
The things that make small schools great are also the things that make that create challenge. I think a few things. One is that your funding stability is often very tenuous. When you're operating in Washington State, where I am, funding is the prime source comes through apportionment, which is based entirely on enrollment. And in a small district, you do not have a large enough scale that you can balance out a small class size. So you may have a kindergarten class that comes in significantly lower than a graduating class. And you have to be able to respond quickly to those changes in funding based on enrollment. So again, that ability to be flexible is helpful, but there is definitely less room for error, less margin for error as you see a smaller student count.
Mm.
That also, I think, lends itself to the unique challenge of in a small district, everyone is wearing multiple hats.
Mm.
So your teachers are also probably serving as an athletic director. Your teacher might be driving bus sometimes. Your coach is also maybe a custodian in the district. So you've got to adjust to those kinds of scheduling issues. Your teaching staff does many things. Your principals do far beyond what you would picture a principal doing. They're also the assessment coordinator. They're the special education director. They're the early learning coordinator. They might, in our district, they handle ECAP.
Mm.
So, and that only that's from the top of the organization to the bottom. So, as a superintendent, I've served in so many roles. I've been the facility director, I've been the transportation director, I've been the SPED director, I've been state and federal programs. So and that's just a tiny microcosm. I don't have an HR director. So when there is an HR issue, I work with our payroll officer on payroll issues, but I am the HR person in our district. So I've got to know how to navigate that. I'm the risk management person. Our technology director, who is also the CTE director and a teacher, doesn't have full capacity for that. So that's something that I was at a cyber summit this week learning about cybersecurity in our district, because we're definitely leaning into a lot of technology, and I've got to know those things.
Mm.
Not that I wouldn't have to know them in a larger district, because absolutely superintendents in larger districts face challenges in terms of just sheer scale that I don't have. However, I have to know it at a depth. I understand the funding model for transportation.
Mm.
I have to know that at a depth that is that I think is unique, and I think it is a challenge. It creates some real burnout in administrative roles in small districts, pretty tremendous burnout. It also creates, and this is an area that I'm really passionate about, a turnover in the superintendency in a small district. And in a small district, your superintendent has to have so much knowledge, so many skills, and it takes time to learn those things. So as you're seeing turnover in those districts, it has huge impacts on the students in those districts. And to me, that issue is one that I'm really passionate about. We've got to create networks for superintendents,
Mm.
for principals, and for teachers of small districts, so that they have the support to have success and be able to thrive in those positions. Because without that, students are suffering in small districts, and that is not something that any of us should be okay with.
No, I love that. I think all the points that you mentioned about the funding and the teachers doing multiple jobs, I think they all are very relevant points. And that's why I think now I can understand that the people dependency can be much more than in any school district. So tell me about, how do you make sure that the process is paramount, and what all processes have you created in the last 3 years?
Absolutely. I think this became more clear to me when I left our past district. I'd been there as a superintendent for 5 years, had been in the district for 27 years, so taught, principal. And that being said, when I left that district, there were so many processes and systems that had not been really formalized or written down in a way that were easily recreated with new people. And that I felt that I had not done justice. I was certainly a phone call away, and there were incredible people in the district, a great superintendent who followed me, great people who could pick up the pieces. but there were so many things that were not formalized.
Mm.
That was problematic. And so that being said, when I came to Manson, I was hired in July. And when I was hired, we were in a situation where the finances appeared to be strong in Manson.
Mm.
And quickly, I had learned in a small district a lot about budgeting. But when I came in mid-January, the budget's been approved, it's been crafted, everything is, purchase orders are planned for the next year. July is when budgets are adopted in our state. And so I quickly saw some concerning issues around budget. There was a portable that we were purchasing. And in a discussion with the business manager, I said, show me in the budget where this is allocated for.
Mm.
Well, there was nowhere in the budget that this purchase had really been allocated.
Okay.
And in September, we got a call saying, although our budget was fine, Manson had not, I had asked for a cash flow to be created.
Mm.
We ended up in a negative cash flow creation 2 months into my superintendency.
Wow. Okay.
So we had to adjust. And again, great people, just not great systems. There wasn't a cash flow. Principals weren't empowered to manage a budget. People weren't provided a budget that said, this is your budget and you've got to stay within that budget. It was really dependent on people rather than systems. And so in my first year of the superintendency, I remember I get this call from our county, from our business manager, our county, and our local educational service district, and spent the day just trying to dig in what's really happening here. And quickly it became apparent that we were in a non-sustainable budget. It had been adopted. On paper, it looked great, but in reality, it was not a budget that could sustain the district. So we, in my December of my first year, I had to reduce staff by 20 folks here at Manson.
Damn.
And if you want to talk about what's hard, you're a new leader. You have no capital in terms of the emotional trust. There's not a lot of trust built by December. And so we had to make a reduction of a tremendous amount of our staff. We had to reduce all kinds of activities and spending across the district. People came together and did that incredibly well. But that being said, what I'll tell you is, and we worked hard to try to restore those positions as quickly as we could. I can tell you at the end of year 2, which has just finished, we're back at an 8% ending fund balance. Our cash flow is solid, and we're able to do the things that we need to do as a district. There is opportunity inside crisis. So I had come off leaving a district, and I knew that we needed systems around things like how our snow days, simple things like on a snow day, who makes the call and what's that chain of command? What are the layers that we do that? We also needed really clear systems for when positions were opened, how we would look at every position to really economize and make those positions really efficient in a time when finances are challenging. So within that reduction, there were opportunities to really look at our system and say, what are some system pieces we need in place around hiring, around budgeting, around strategic planning. Those key systems stepped to the forefront and said, if you don't have these in place, when crisis comes, you won't be prepared to deal with those in a way that has the least disruption for students.
Right.
And that's absolutely what you want to do, right? Keep that away from the students. And so what that led to was system work in everything. So as we determined how many positions we were reducing, we had to look at across the board our classified personnel and say, how can we combine positions for efficiency? And what are the things that we need to begin writing down to make sure our process? And so this is year 3, we have formalized things from door entry procedures that are now on a server instead of on a written piece of paper somewhere on someone's computer that no one could find, right? So it's simple things, but it's also budget processes, using the tools that are within our budget software so that people can see their budget monthly and get updates. So they really are empowered to determine, how do I use this budget to get to the district's strategic plans? So I hope that answers that question about systems.
I think I always believe that a superintendent's biggest role is arranging finances, keeping the financial health of the organization healthy. Because if that is sorted, the rest of the things can be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you are thinking of empowering your principals, at least telling them what amount of money that they have and how they should plan it, because then you are kind of empowering them. And when you do that, they will tend to always end up saving money for a rainy day. So, which is even beautiful. First of all, also congratulations of being the president of WASA.
Thank you.
So how long is this presidency for?
So this year I am the president-elect. So this year I spend time with Sean Carey, who is our state association president of school administrators. And then next year, so 26, 27, I'll serve in the WASA presidency. And then the year after that, I'll be in the past president role. So for 3 years, you're really serving with WASA. And WASA has been an organization for me that helped me to understand what is it that a superintendent does and build networks and connections for me to be able to learn and grow and do the work better. I have a long way to go, but definitely growing in the work.
No, absolutely. So what's your vision with WASA? What do you want to achieve? Of course, when you are in the middle year and serving.
For sure. Priorities for me really have to do with, number one, I think we've got to work as in our state, and I would probably say across the nation, in restoring faith in public schools. I think public schools are doing incredible work every single day. And if we look at the research that's out there, people will say that they don't trust public schools. They think public schools are on a bad path. But if you ask parents, how do you feel about your local school? What you hear is overwhelmingly, I think 70% in some latest research, people say, but we love our school. And I think public schools have not done a good enough job of really sharing the stories of the incredible work. I am a proud graduate of public schools, and my kids are graduates of public schools. I think that we all, in the role of superintendents, in the role of teachers and principals, owe it to kids and to our system to talk about the successes, to tell the story of public schools in this country, because there is incredible work happening for all kids. We are serving every kid that walks in the door, kids with severe disabilities, highly capable students, kids from wealthy families, kids from poverty. Kids across every demographic are walking through our doors, and we serve them all proudly. And I am so proud to be a part of that. I want that. That's number one for me, right? I think we all have that. We've gotten caught in this political world where public schools have become so politicized, and frankly, educating students is nonpartisan. I don't know anyone who doesn't want kids to have strong academics, to have what they need to reach those academics, whether that's meals, social emotional supports, mental health counseling, whatever it might be. So we've got to get back to what it is that public schools do really well, and try to bring people to that middle, because that's where schools are. So that's big. Number two is really building networks for administrators. I'm worried about the pipeline for administrators. When I talk to phenomenal educators today, they say, I would never want to be a principal. I would never want to be a superintendent. And I'll tell you, it's incredibly rewarding. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. I would probably say educationally, it's the best job I've ever had, because of the ability to have this network of incredible superintendents that I work with. So we've got to really support and empower leaders to be able to develop more and keep them in the profession, and help them to be able to be really successful and impact kids. And then I'm really passionate about rural education. I really am. I think sometimes we lose track of that when we talk about equitable outcomes for kids. I want to be sure that we're not losing track of students in, in a community of 1,000 kids or kids in a community of 40,000. So I want to be sure that we're providing opportunities that serve all kids well.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you from my personal opinion. People talk a lot about their tax dollars, and the first place that they feel that their tax dollars is coming back to them is education.
Yes.
Because of course they will start to think transport or road infrastructure for granted. So they will definitely not able to feel that tax dollars coming back, or healthcare is already in different mess altogether.
Yes.
But
Yes.
education is the first place where you feel okay, there is at least $15,000 to $25,000 coming back to me from the tax dollars
Yes.
I'm paying. And
Absolutely. I agree.
and I think in terms of the politics part, I do sense that there is at least the federal structure, there does feel an intent to promote more privatization or promote more in the name of parent choice,
Yeah.
giving them direct vouchers, which they would end up paying to a organization who will end up. It's a other way around, because at the end of the day, if they are paying X amount of money to a public school, they would pay an X by two as a voucher, and some private organization is gonna be like, I'm gonna take that half the money and I'm gonna do it end to end. So it, and of course that will come at a cost of no big fields, no extracurricular, and very basic education. So I do feel it is a need of the hour to focus on re-strengthening this entire system, which has been built out very thoughtfully. I would say how much people would say, I know, I've worked with schools, I know how much hard work, and I know the student outcome. And one thing I feel that most of the schools, at least in the US, are generating extremely good scholars. Like even today, the innovation is happening to the people in
Yes.
the US. US is leading that front because of the education system, not because of, I would say, the people tend to give less credit to K-12 and more credit to higher ed. But I think
Yes.
K-12 has a much, because if they were not able to ignite that curiosity, they would have not gone for a postgrad or research. So
100% agree. I think we don't do a good enough job telling the story of the successes of public education. We just don't. And that's our duty as well.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, Talking about the social emotional learning, I also read that you guys were able to take out the 21st Century CCLC fund this year. I think it's in shambles. I think they didn't renew it this year, or did they?
We received, with the uncertainty of federal funds, right? We received a Gear Up grant last year. So we're able to work on some post-secondary. And then this fall, in August, we submitted a grant in July with a local community organization. Well, actually, it's a national organization, Communities in Schools,
Yeah.
which I'm a huge proponent for communities in schools. That idea of how do we partner with community organizations to really break down barriers for kids, and Communities in Schools does it incredibly well. Their model had been built on urban schools. And I was lucky enough to kind of launch a rural network of community and schools here in our region called North Central Washington Communities and Schools. We completed the grant in July, and I have to tell you, I was so pessimistic. I thought there's no way this funding's coming. I'm not sure we'll receive it. Manson, as a district, had just moved to a 4-day school week, which is a big change for us.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Only 30 schools in Washington State can be on that model. But that left Fridays as an opportunity for us to be able to do something different. We actually increased instructional time by going to 4 days by about 32 hours over the year, because we eliminated late starts and half days and all of those things. That being said, we knew that Fridays were a gap. We also know in our community, after school care is problematic. We have a high free and reduced lunch count. So we really wanted to provide this. So we did the grant. And when we got the notice, I was shocked, because I thought, this is a sort of a futile effort. And if you've ever done that grant,
Mm.
It's holy smokes, it's incredible. But we're really excited to launch. We'll launch on October 27th with Friday programming, after school programming, and summer school programming across the district.
No, I'll definitely talk to you about that because at least 5 school client of mine, they were funding my program through 21st Century CCLC, and they didn't get it this year. So it's a bummer. Most of them were
Oh,
expecting.
such a bummer.
Yeah, and they were the one who actually have that fund for last 2 years. So it came as a shocker. And right now their after school program is completely in uncertainty. So I'll definitely connect you for that if they can, help in some direction.
Absolutely. We're excited to launch.
Perfect. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about, and right now, no podcast can be discussed without having a discussion about AI. So
Yeah.
how how do you see your school leveraging AI from the teacher perspective, student perspective, administrator perspective?
I love this question because I think we definitely here's an example of a small district being able to make moves pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I would say that we were a little slow in my mind, a little slow in terms of AI as a district, as a system. When I arrived in 2023, our back to school day was with Jeff Utek, who you may know him. He definitely does a lot of work around technology in schools. And he came to our back to school day and talked to teachers about how AI could be a tool for them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And also about how not to be afraid of AI. So it's my first year. We do the 1 day back to school. People are excited about it. They begin to, I would say dabble a bit in chat, GPT, and some other resources. But then our financial crisis hits, and that all just gets kind of put on pause. And the group teachers are still doing some work, are secondary primarily. So last year, we launched an AI committee among our staff, and we sent them to a couple of statewide conferences with the task of deciding what's next for Manson. Manson, as a district, likes to be kind of an innovative district. It's a cultural approach. That idea of being able to try new things and not be afraid to fail forward. That's a Manson idea. So the group came back, and we, in 1 year, really went from not much in place to updating all of our policies and procedures, creating a standard process in our entire secondary school about how teachers would approach assignments and students using AI. We adopted a student AI platform. And so we piloted last year. This year we are using colleague AI across the board. And definitely in just a short amount of time, we're able to harness AI and begin talking with students. We have an AI computer science course this year. And so we've systematized, this is how we're going to approach AI again, it goes back to that system. How will we approach it as teachers? How will we approach it with students? What's our philosophy on AI? And our philosophy really is that, again, it doesn't replace the human impact, but it's a tool. It's an important tool for students and staff. And it's a tool that we can use, and we have a responsibility to train our students to use ethically and responsibly as they move forward into the world beyond Manson High School.
Absolutely agreed. And I'm so glad you're looking at it positively. So did you guys tell us more about did you guys do any professional development for your teachers, or how did that go?
We did. Absolutely, we did. Last year we sent several staff to our AI summits statewide. That staff then came back and trained our own staff. I find that tends to be the most successful because we had resident experts. Because we're a small enough system with only about 55 teaching staff. Yeah, 55 teaching staff. We were able to train trainers enough that they could support teachers in that work. And we have teachers kind of across the board. Some are utilizing it very heavily, others less. but I would say everyone is utilizing at some level AI to either be more efficient in their work, or I was in a lesson recently where students were using AI to help revise rough drafts and ensure conventions are accurate. So we see kind of across the board. We also see increasingly people using it as a thought partner. I'm thinking about we have a strong post-secondary focus. I'm thinking about going to college. Here's some things that I'm really interested in, and using a voice feature to be able to use that as a thought partner about what are some things I should consider as I make decisions. So we see that. We also are using it system-wise to be more efficient in systems. So we were working recently on a revising our door entry procedure or a volunteer procedure. So we have a volunteer handbook that had not been updated at Manson for quite some time, an embarrassingly long time, and was stored somewhere on somebody's file. So we pulled up that document. We were able to take our risk management advice, that document, risk management advice, a checklist, our strategic plan, and our core values as a district, and take that document, RCWs and WACs in our state, the laws, and say, okay, let's update this document to give us an initial draft that then we push out to our team and say, okay, now the human element, here's what that came from our document, our laws, our district's priorities and goals, and our community context. Now we've got a draft. Let's revise that draft. The amount of efficiency that creates as a district is incredible in terms of time. Now, you can't trust it always, right? Sometimes it'll make things up. So we definitely have to have that human context. It never replaces the human. But at the district and systems level, it's become an invaluable partner in ensuring that we're able to update and be efficient with our time. So we see the training happening primarily from us, by our teachers. Our local educational service district also comes out and does some training. There's so much interest in AI. If you lean into that space, there are people that want to train you. Some are vendors, right? Some want to sell you something. And others really have a passion. We're lucky enough in our community that we have some folks who are retired Microsoft folks who want to come in and teach our kids. We applied to a recent community grant with an organization that's passionate about financial literacy, and we wove AI literacy into that financial literacy grant. And they're funding a teacher over the next 2 years to really invest in building systems around AI and financial literacy and to provide ongoing training. So there are resources out there. This is an area people are excited about. And we've been able to harness those pretty effectively in our community and within our own organization.
Wow. Love that idea. I think it's a beautiful idea of how you connect financial and AI literacy together. So love it. And I love the resident being an expert part. I think that's brilliant. And also the community. Honestly, you are like, you can handle a district of even a 50,000 kids, looking from the way you have handled things that are.
I don't know about that. I love our 650.
But as an educator, you always want to have a much larger and bigger impact. So I
100%.
I hope someday you lead a much, much larger school district. But it has been an absolute pleasure. I think I've got so many ideas, so many notes that I'll be sharing with you afterwards. But thank you so much for giving up time. I think.
Thank you so much for the time today and the opportunity to talk about the incredible people doing great work at Manson. I'm so thankful for this opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much.